Okay. Well, welcome, you guys. I'm so excited everyone's here. Okay. Okay. So, how are you guys?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
Doing
I'm
good.
nervous.
Doing good.
I'm
Me
s-
too.
I'm sweating, but here we are. We're all nervous. We're all vulnerable, so this is good, right? So,
Right.
today I wanted to talk about you guys about vulnerability and the courage behind it because we tend to see vulnerability as weakness, right? So we mostly as energy sensitives have this thing where we fear opening up, right? And it's not that we're proud, it's not that we're afraid. It's basically that we are more guarded than most people because we can sense energy, right? So immediately we meet somebody and we're just like, okay, something's up here, right? So we kind of stay guarded. And when it comes to vulnerability, it is actually a beautiful thing, but we have to learn to basically get there. When you search the definition of vulnerability, right, in the dictionary is actually pretty terrifying. It defines it to be like this ability to be easily physically hurt, emotionally or mentally hurt, influenced or attacked. So when we actually see the actual meaning, it's kind of freaky. We're just like, oh my goodness, right? So what it does is it makes us feel shame, right? So we hear since we're little, don't cry about this, don't let them see that you care, don't let them see you down, and we're kind of always with this thing of we have to act strong constantly, right? We're people's rocks. And I don't know about you guys, but when you're in that position and you're the one that breaks down, have you guys ever realized how most people don't know how to deal with you when you break down? Right. So everybody
Yeah.
comes to you and, everyone's like, I need your help. We're very open. We welcome people with open arms. But when it's us, it's almost like nobody knows what to do, right? Like they think of you in a certain way and they put you in this pedestal almost like, hey, you're not supposed to be having a meltdown, right? So, what do we do to work with vulnerability? We have to work. I'm looking at my notes here, I'm like all over the place, right? So, we have to work with that fear of opening up. Because a lot of times I remember in my 20s, I was imprisoned by vulnerability. That was my prison, right? I felt if I opened up completely, people would instantly judge me. I started my shop at a very early age with the elders and my grandmother, right? So I was in a position to be judged easily, like, oh, you're doing this because of your grandmother, or you're doing this because of this. So my mechanism was like, I'm going to not express myself. I'm going to keep myself hidden. And then at some point, I remember it was kind of like an emotional rock bottom. And I remember just thinking to myself, why am I feeling like this? And we had a circle in the fire, and you realize that you involuntarily kind of build up this wall between you and people, right? And it just almost kind of like if you're there, you know what I mean? They have to get through layers and layers of you until they can finally get to know the real you, right? And I know you guys probably know what I mean. We are very protected when it comes to that, right? So basically, we are not zombies, right? So we have to learn that all of our emotions are neutral. And that's when in my 20s, I kind of started turning it around. I started seeing my fear as neutral, my anger as neutral, my sadness, whatever emotion that wasn't happiness, which we easily accept. The elders would say, this is neutral, this is going somewhere, right? And we're kind of taught or programmed to believe anger is a bad thing, right? So you're angry, you have a problem, you have to work with your anger, you can't be sad, you can't be broken. But these are all neutral, they're there for a reason, right? So without anger, we wouldn't reach the stage of the phoenix rising. So we wouldn't reach the stage where we say, I've had enough, I'm going to bring change. Without sadness, we wouldn't release, right? So when we take a look at everything about vulnerability, the way that it is presented is weakness, right? So if I'm vulnerable, I'm weak, right? Because of shame. So basically, we get scared to put ourselves out there because of judgment, because you're different, right? If you're a gifted person, you can't just reach out to someone and say, oh my God, I think I saw something in my hallway, because they're going to be like, okay, are you okay? Right. So basically, the lack of vulnerability leads to feelings of unworthiness. We start feeling like, well, I can't open up. I can't, I am there for everybody, but I can't be heard, right? Or they won't hear me. And we start feeling like we're not worthy of ourselves. And if you guys follow my Instagram, I'm constantly reminding everybody, you are worth it. You've got this, you matter. And this is some things that we need to work with ourselves, because being in this position, sometimes it's almost like we feel invisible, right? And we kind of just lose that connection sometimes with the world. It's almost like we detach ourselves, even though we feel so deeply. We completely detach, because it's like the connection only gets you to a certain point. Am I making sense, you guys? Because I'm very nervous, so it's okay if I'm all over the place. Right? So
You're doing great.
thank you. So thank you, guys. So the reality is that whether we admit it or not, we are always vulnerable, right? And the key here that helped me work with vulnerability was accepting all of the feelings of vulnerability, right? So basically, if you teach yourself to sit comfortable with those emotions and you welcome them yourself, through time, you start feeling stronger. You start saying, okay, so my anger is valid, right? My feeling of despair is valid. Doesn't make us weaker. And what I've noticed with working with so many clients is my most raw and amazing people that I've ever met, I meet them in a time where they will email you or get a reading and say, I am just so vulnerable. I'm sorry. But this is where we crack open, right? So vulnerability comes through and it makes us break open. And when we crack open and we sit with our feelings, this is where I feel like we start tapping into that primal energy, into all of these energies, whether it's in the Akashic, in your, sorry, my cat, in your energy field, especially in your lower chakra, especially in that root, right? So sitting in stillness is a very vulnerable thing as well. And that is, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term the void. I tend to call it the void. When we are in a void, is that kind of pause that happens between moments of ascension, chaotic moments, moments of transition. We end up in this place that's called the void. So in this void, we feel lost. We feel like we're not moving forward, like nothing's happening, right? And when that happens, that's energy saying we got to sit in the stillness to let the breakthrough happen. But what we usually do is we get guarded, right? And we're just like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to sit there. Like when I do yoga, there's this position, this asana, and they always do it at the end of the class. And you have to like lay down, and I call it the dead man's pose. I don't remember the actual name of it, but that's how they always end the class. And when I'm in my most vulnerable stages, I can't do that for more than 30 seconds. Like I just get up and roll my mat and I'm just like, okay, bye. Right. And that is because when we're at our most vulnerable, we don't want to tap in for some reason. We always have this thing that's like, you're going there. Let's go. Right. So when we talk about vulnerability, we cannot, even though we think we can't numb any emotion. Right. So what happens is we start pushing them to the side. Well, I don't want to feel this right now. Well, I can't deal with this right now. I have things to do. And when we're feeling something, I realize that people react differently. So if you are feeling all the feels, you'll start cleaning instead, and you'll start cleaning the kitchen like someone's coming over, or you'll go clear your closet and now you have 17 bags of clothes. You'll start cleaning your kids' room, whatever it is. You realize that when you're feeling vulnerable, instead of sitting there, you start doing something else. You go for a run, you go shopping, whatever it is, because we're so uncomfortable there. So the first thing that we have to do is see the courage that it takes to be vulnerable, right? So we live in a world where everybody is easily tough. Oh, I'm tough. I'm not afraid of anything. I don't feel anything. I'm not attached. I'm this and that. And that's what you're kind of raised into thinking. Oh, that person's strong. They don't get their emotions involved. They don't react on emotion. But is that really courageous, or is that just becoming a zombie? Right. And we tend to do that a lot. People that are gifted tend to turn off their emotions, and we go throughout the day and we don't want to be seen. And it's like, let me just go here. Let me do this. Right. But what happens is that becomes our shadow, right? That becomes the shadow work. And as beautiful as shadow work is, we all have to be honest. We don't like to work with the shadow. When you feel that shift and you're like, oh my God, because now you have to go into the darkness and transmute it into the light. And yes, it turns into wisdom, but the best thing to do is try not avoid it at all. Right. So basically, what we want to do is slowly break those emotional walls, and kind of like understanding that these walls are not doing any good. So when I say this, people will be like, well, if I wear my heart on the sleeves, this person's going to take advantage of me. Well, no, this is where your intuition comes into play, right? This is where that gut feeling comes into play. Another thing that we don't realize is that when we become completely detached, we also become detached from our own self, right? So a lot of times, if you think about it, when you are numbing yourself to what you're feeling, it happens to me. I go a whole day thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't get a gut feeling today, or I'm driving my car and it's like, I don't even know how I got here, right? Because we're so detached. So how do we connect? And it has a lot to do with these feelings. Now, the first thing that I always say is throughout the day, we're always going to feel emotion, right? So we see out there, positive vibes only. And you guys see me post a lot about that. I'm like admitting people as we go. So we'll see, for example, positive vibes only, happiness only, positive vibes welcome. And you guys know that I have at least once a day, I'll say, keep your toxic positive vibes away. So we wake up, and let's say we wake up and we're in this great mood and we're just like, yeah, it's going to be a great day. And then you spill your coffee, and then, madness, the kids are just going crazy, your dogs are insane, the traffic is insane, and by the time you get to work or whatever, you're just not feeling it anymore. And right there, we're just like, oh, my day's gone to shit, right? But we won't sit with that. We're just like, okay, I'm on the go mentally, now I have to do this and I have to do that. And we shut everything off, right? Because we start thinking, if I get angry at something, we're just like, oh, I shouldn't get angry with that. Why am I so easily to get anger? Instead of seeing, okay, I got angry because, right, we live in a world where anger, oh my gosh, anger, the more that you go on social media lately, it's like this, people are afraid of it. It's like anger is this really bad thing. And when I talk to the elders, they always said anger is medicine, right? So we need anger for medicine, for transitioning, for awakening, whatever you guys want to call it, enlightenment, spirituality, all of these themes, right? We need that anger for that transition. Without that anger, I'm going to say my comfort zone, because my anger is not saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of this, Without the sadness, same thing. I'm just going to stay right there, So what can we do to start expressing our emotions, to start speaking our mind, is doing it with ourselves first. And I know sometimes when I heard that, I was like, wow, that sounds really easy. I am a Gemini, I'm a triple air. All my signs are air. So I can talk out of my ears without moving my mouth by myself. But then when I actually started opening myself up to my own emotions, I kind of froze and I was like, oh my goodness, like, what is this? It's kind of like opening a Pandora's box. But the first thing you want to do is don't be afraid with yourself first to express what you're feeling, whether it's in your mind, however, and start speaking your mind, because it's my cat. She's like, you're doing great. We kind of get stuck in this pattern of we always constantly have to be happy. This is what we're always aiming for, right? And happiness to me is a foundation. So this is where our house is built on happiness. As we live our day, all this stuff gets in there. And it's our responsibility to pull that stuff out, right? Opening up and getting back. Happiness to me is not something someone can give me. Yes, people will make us happy. Moments will make us happy. It's like a cherry on top, but I'm responsible for mine, right? So in order for me to be courageous, I need to also tap into the opposite of happiness. Why am I feeling like this? Knowing that it's valid, right? But just because it's valid doesn't mean, okay, well, I'm going to sit in it because it's okay for me to be angry. Well, it's okay for me to be angry, but let's work with it. We have to take these emotions and turn it into medicine, right? And what you want to do first is just always start telling yourself, I love you, right? And, I'm always telling people, I love you all the time. I'm like, I love you. I love you. And sometimes when I was younger, it would get me in trouble because people thought the wrong thing. But basically, if we are constantly reminding ourselves, I love me, it's okay, we start feeling safer. We start saying, okay, it's okay for me to feel like this. And to me, that takes courage, right? It takes more courage for us to stand up when we're shaking, but truly expressing what we feel, than it does us staying quiet and feeling like we're getting trampled on and like no one's hearing us, right? Because the more silent that we stay, but the more stronger we're trying to be for everyone around us, whether it's your clients, whether it's the people that you love, your friends. If you have that essence of a curandero or a healer or whatever labels we use for that, you are a magnet for people. People will constantly come to you. They'll say, I love your energy. Let me tell you something. And then they dump all of this stuff. And I don't know if you guys have ever realized, a lot of people will come into your life and they only express all the bad things that happen, but they never contact you when something good happens, right? So we kind of feel sometimes like, how can I vocalize? How can I set boundaries? Because the more numb I become, I'm also afraid to set boundaries, right? Because then it'll be like, well, I'm not worthy to talk to unless they have something bad happening in their life, right? So basically, we have to work with the feelings of shame. So we start first and it's like, okay, I love you. Why do I feel I'm ashamed of my emotions? What is it about the way that I'm feeling that makes me feel ashamed? Is it because we constantly have expectations of other people, right? That it's like, oh, wow, you're so strong. Oh, wow, you always got it together. Oh, wow, aren't you one of those healer people? Don't you guys always have it together? And it always makes me laugh because it's like all of the curanderos that I've known, all of the elders, people that I look up to, all my clients, myself, nobody I know has their shit together. I think people just kind of put this pedestal, right? So how can we work with this? First of all, we got to find the shame, right? So the shame is, it's like birth, and what I call it is the ego script, right? So I called it the ego script, and it kind of stayed like that. And we go back to our childhood, right? So in our childhood, if we lived in a happy home, right? You are in a safe environment, right? So people pay attention to you. You're kind of like, woo. But somehow, somewhere, there's always that moment, the first time ever, that you feel unwanted, right? So we have to bring in our inner child to this one. And this one is vulnerable itself, right? Because a lot of times we don't realize that we react the way that we do and we stay closed off because of our inner child, right? So, for example, I'll be very open. My ego script was born sometime when I was 8 or 9. And I was really fast. I was the fastest to me. And at that time, I thought I was the fastest girl in the world. And, I was very small for my age and very tiny. And we were at school and they had 2 captains, and those 2 captains were my friends, and they were going to pick out I think it was a kickball team. So I'm standing there all excited because I loved kickball. And I'm looking at my friends and I'm like, oh, they're going to pick me first. They're going to fight over me, because I was really good. So they start picking and I'm just sitting there kind of like, And guess who got picked last? Me. I got picked last, and not even by anybody. The PE teacher was like, okay, you go to that group. And I was just that was, yeah, that was, that was my first moment that I stood there and I acted all cool, but I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, no one picked me. And I went home all just feeling, my mom was asking me and I just didn't say anything. But that was the first moment that I can recall where my ego script was born. So the ego script stays with us. So at that moment, right, even though I work with a lot of people and I'm like, let's take a look at the ego script. So I'll give him an exercise and we'll say, oh, but I had a great childhood. We tend to think that ego script only comes from, a turmoil childhood, but we all have it. I had a pretty good childhood. And at that moment, for the first time ever, I felt that I wasn't worthy, that they would never pick me first, that I was just the person they put in there because they couldn't even pick me. And for us now as grownups, we're just like, oh my goodness, it's just a game. But for you, when you're a child, that changes everything. And at that young age, you now have in your script, in your mind, something that will always say, you're not worthy. They're never going to pick you first. You're always going to be that one last friend. And something so simple like that changes us forever. And it's part of why we become closed off. And it's part of why at such an early age, we start feeling like we're not worth it, right? Like we're not the pretty girls. We're not these people. We're not that friend. It's like we're over here in a corner. And what I've noticed is that a lot of gifted people, and I call them gifted, right? So there's many labels, there's psychics, there's mediums. I don't like those words. I feel it confuses people. I like to call people gifted. And to me, everyone's gifted. It's just a level of how connected you are. But I realize that most of all gifted people that I've worked with, we are all the outsiders. I have never really worked with a gifted person that was like the star of anything, right? So we know that feeling. And then it's that thing that constantly throughout our life will say, I'm not good enough. And then after that, you go through middle school, which middle school was just, I don't even like going to middle school in my mind. Then we go to high school, same thing. And by the time we're a grown up, now we're full with all of these scripts, right? And then we are confused because if we had a really good life, we're just like, oh my God, why am I feeling like this, right? Why am I carrying this? Like, why is this heaviness? And at some point we even just don't even know what we're constantly feeling heavy. And it is because of those ego scripts. And usually when that happens, we close ourselves off, right? So I become very protective of myself. And by doing this, we don't realize that somehow, somewhere, these scripts turn into shame. Right. So I'm ashamed of myself. And then we start walking around. Someone bumps into you. Let's say someone bumps into you. Now you're the person apologizing because that person bumped into you. Have you guys ever done that?
Yes.
That somebody bumps into you and you're like so concerned and you're like, I'm so sorry. And they're kind of looking at you and they're like, I'm sorry. And that is us. We're apologizing for taking space. We're literally apologizing for someone else's action. So when we see how detachment works and how when we become so closed off, we start apologizing for other people. You also start carrying around other people's burdens. If a friend is in trouble, we feel the anxiety, especially if you have that clairsentience, you are connected. If someone's in trouble, you take that trouble. You now feel like my path in life is to take other people's burdens and help them, right? Because it feels good for us, right? We like to help people. It just feels good. But somewhere along those lines, you forget about yourself. And then years pass and you start feeling this exhaustion. And then we just start saying, okay, I'm getting older. I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not this. And then we start changing our diets, right? And we start working out and you go do all that stuff once you start approaching 40. 40 crisis here. It's okay. I'll make it through. And you start realizing that everything you do is still not giving you this energy. And then you're like, well, if I'm eating good, right? I'm taking care of myself. I'm trying to go to sleep early. Why am I always so tired? Well, you're tired because you're not giving yourself the time that you need. You're not only carrying around other people's burdens now, but you refuse to work with yourself, right? So we're carrying this load of energy. And this is what I like to call ascension flu. And ascension flu is something that not many people ever talk about. You see a lot of people online talking about ascension, and it's great, and enlightenment. I am enlightened. I'm awakened, and in my roots, we kind of say you are never fully awakened in life. You have little periods of awakening, and then you go back to another cycle of transition. But they fail to mention, to me, my opinion, the reality of enlightenment and being on that path is extremely hard. It's like the hardest thing. It's like, it sounds great because most people, I don't even think a lot of people know what it really is, but there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of changes. Once you're comfortable, here comes the universe saying, you're comfortable. Let's go ahead and start this one. And you're just like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. You're just like, I need a break, And one thing is that we get this thing, and I call it ascension flu, right? So when we have the physical flu, we are like just heavy and we are hot and our head gets funny and we have a fever and we don't feel good. Same thing when we're going through a massive period of ascension because we refuse to sit in the stillness, right? So what happens is that our energy starts changing. We start shifting. So does our body. So we start feeling heavy. And then we're just like, I'm always tired. Right. And I've had days like that. A lot of people always say, oh, you must have your shit together. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm still alive. So obviously I don't. But I really don't. And you guys know that I'm very open about that. But there's days that I will drink all the coffee and then I'll drink all the water and I'll try to eat good. And I'm dead tired. Like, it doesn't matter what I do. And that is because we have the ascension flu. We're not cleansing our energy, right? I'm constantly reminding people, take your selenite, cleanse your energy. I think we all fail at that at some point. We're not cleansing our space, right? We think we'll just light the sage a little bit and burn it, but you don't realize that you're carrying around energy that doesn't belong to you, and that stays as residual in your space. So we have to clean our space, and then we have to sit with ourselves. And then here is when we're going to bring in meditation, the so-called meditation that I've been called the meditation police for 16 years now. And at first, I used to really dislike that. I used to feel like people were kind of making fun of me, but now I kind of wear it proudly. Meditation is another thing that has been blown out of proportion. So to meditate correctly, you have to buy this fluffy pillow. You have to sit in a really uncomfortable position on the floor with your legs crossed. So if you're, in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you know that if you sit with your legs crossed on the floor, someone's going to have to help you up because you're not going to be able to get up. It's uncomfortable for your back. I have a really crooked backbone, so I can't be sitting there like, and we kind of give it up instantly. We're just like, oh my gosh, no, like that just hurts. Meditation hurts. And I think it's because it's been portrayed as this thing, like you have to have these bells and you have to have this $50 pillow and you have to have a whole room. And you're just like, well, I live a kind of normal life and all my rooms are taken. And meditation is actually medication for ourselves. So is there a right or wrong way to do meditation? And what I always say is there's no right or wrong way. It's whatever works for you. Sometimes I dance it out, and that really brings me to the moment. Sometimes I'll sit out there and throw the frisbee at my dog, who is just on autopilot. So I could throw this frisbee without even thinking, and he will forever just fetch. Sometimes I'll go for a walk. Sometimes I just stare off in space. Meditation is what works for you, but meditation is a great way to sit there and literally close your eyes without having to breathe when you're told to breathe. Because I don't know about you guys, but that's why I barely do guided meditations with people because I don't like to be told breathe in. And then sometimes they'll say breathe in and you're breathing in and they hold it forever. And you're like, oh my gosh. And then they're like, breathe out, or they'll do it really fast. Take a deep breath. And you're like, and then they're like, breathe it out. And you're like, oh my gosh, So I would say sit there, take your deep breaths in whenever you feel like it, breathe out whenever you feel like it, and then bring in that question, how am I doing today? And I talked about this the other day because I did that exercise. And in that exercise, you had to ask yourself, how are you? Are you okay? What's the question? Are you okay? And I remember it was like I was doing a yoga thing off the TV, and because I can't ever do anything in person. I'm still like, but people just, the social thing. But the lady was like, are you okay? And I remember doing the pose and looking at the tree, and I was like, my answer literally was, I think so. And then my brain was like, I don't think I know how to answer this question. And then ever since that day, that's been on my mind. So if I were to ask you guys, ask yourself, are you okay? Would you be able to answer that question? It's almost right. It's almost like and it's not that people don't ask you, are you okay? It's almost like we go on autopilot. Someone will say, hey, Natalia, how are you doing? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm great. Because I'm so used to, yeah, I'm great. How are you? And then we talk, right? But then I realized that's another thing when we're blocking vulnerability. Why are we so afraid or ashamed to say, no, you know what? I don't think I'm okay today. Like, I'm just out of it today. I'm not in the mood, right? That right there is a very, very straight up answer without sharing too much. Why can't we do that? And I feel it's a healer thing, that it's not that we're proud. It's that we feel we're a burden. We feel like we're not allowed to say, I'm not having a good day. We feel like the other person's going to be like, why? Like it's that pressure, right? So that lack of vulnerability is what gives us that feeling of unworthiness, right? And when we think of that, it's ironic when I actually think about it, that the very fear of being vulnerable makes us lose our self-worth, because it is vulnerability that gives us, right? So we fear vulnerability because this is exactly what we need. And I have met people that are extremely vulnerable and they're okay with it. And I look up at them and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be like you one day when I grow up, right? But usually if we're very closed off, I feel like that's a sign that's saying this is part of our shadow, right? So a lot of times for us to understand our shadow, we'll get our natal pole, chart, and we'll see the Lilith. The Lilith explains the shadow aspect, the part when I do natal charts for people, they'll look at their Lilith and they're just like, oh my gosh, I don't like this part, but it's so true, but it goes beyond that. It goes asking yourself, are you open? Are you really open? Because if we're not, then that's part of our journey. Right? So we have to go into that inner critic. We have to go into that ego script. Why was it born? What happened in our childhood that a lot of times it's not something big. Like with me, it was a game of kickball. I should have been fine. I should have been like, okay, you guys didn't pick me. I'm still going to win. I don't remember if we won or not because I was destroyed. I was just like, but that little thing right there in my whole 20s, it was just this feeling of like I don't matter. I remember thinking like, I just don't matter. Like, I'm not worth it. Like, it's almost like you are not a person. Does that make sense? Like you close yourself so off that sometimes it's almost like we sit there and we're like, I don't even know if I can feel anymore. Right. So there's something there that we have to work with, let me see. So vulnerability also has a paradox. right? Because we look for it in others. We love vulnerability in other people. We see someone who's vulnerable and we see how raw they are, right? And I meet people like this. I have so many clients that are awakened in the whole vulnerability department that I'm just like, trying to tell them, oh my gosh, you are such a beautiful soul. And they're just like, no, you just say that. And it's like, no, I don't have to say that. Trust me, I don't say that to anyone. But we look for vulnerability in other people, but we hide it from our own selves. So not only do we hide our vulnerability from other people, we also hide it from ourselves. We don't want it. And that's the truth. We don't want to be vulnerable, but we need it, right? So we equate vulnerability with weakness, right? And it's tough to actually see the courage in it, so I've kind of came up with a few exercises for you guys. And these are very easy exercises. You guys know me. You don't have to buy anything. You just really need yourself for this and a journal. I don't know about you guys, but I like journaling. Because I am at an age that if I don't write it down, I will forget. But the first thing I want you to do when you can is either play some music that feels good for you. No, you don't have to go choose meditation music. Anything that makes you feel super comfortable. Those songs that you play that just feel like home and you're like, I could listen to the song on repeat. So I want you to choose a song that makes you feel like home. And I want you to just relax there. I want you to sit there, have a good time, relax. Once you're relaxed, I want you to ask yourself the first question is, am I okay? Right? And I want you to sit with whatever comes. And a lot of feelings come up when you ask that question. My brain instantly went into, yeah, I think so. And then I was like, I don't know how to answer that. And at that moment, you realize, like, how do you answer? It's such a simple question. Are you okay? And you're just like, why are you asking me this? I am uncomfortable. Right. So I want you to sit there with whatever emotion shows up. I don't want you to try to control it. I don't want you to try to push it away. I want to see why this emotion is uncomfortable for me. Right. So pushing myself a little bit out of that comfort zone, bringing in the courage there, right? And saying, why is this so bad? If I'm angry, why is it so bad? Did something happen to me that kind of taught me I'm not allowed to be angry? And we see this with men a lot. We see with men when they're little, boys don't cry, men don't cry, blah, 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 and this and that. And you barely hear anybody ever talking about this, right? And I always talk about this because men healers are out there, men brujas, brujos. I have many elders that are men, and I'm also raising a little boy. And I see him sometimes, he'll get upset over his Legos. He's 9. And I'll see him there just holding his tears. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I don't want to cry. I don't want to be tough. And I'm like, honey, it's okay. You can cry, and we see what that turns into because people then grow up saying, oh, men have no emotions. Men have no feelings. And it's like, you kind of have to see it also that men were brought up thinking boys don't cry. Boys don't cry. And then girls were brought up thinking you have to keep your emotions to yourself. You can't let people see you weak. Showing your emotions is weakness, right? And that's when we start thinking like, when we're children, we're free. If you see children are gifted. They will see spirits like it's nobody's business. But somewhere that ego script is born. And then you can have a child that's so gifted with spirits and they could be a natural medium, but eventually they'll start saying, this is my imagination. This is not true. And then eventually they'll grow up saying there's something wrong with me because I see these beings, but everybody's telling me they're not there, but I'm not crazy and they're there. Right. So first thing we want to do is see why. Why are we ashamed? Why are we ashamed of feeling anger? Why is anger so bad? We think of anger and we think of that Eminem song and Rihanna. No, was it Rihanna?
Yeah.
He's like burning the house down, right?
Yeah.
So we think of anger and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to burn the house down like Megan Fox and Eminem, But anger is so much more than that. Can it take over us? Yeah. we've all had moments where we're so enraged that we may say things and do things and we snap out of it. And then we're like, oh my gosh. Right. And a lot of times those blow ups, right? Nobody sees that most people that blow up like that, that's not like induced by anything else, is because this person was holding on to so much that that cup fell and they lost their shit, but they're not crazy. It's because everything just came out, right? And we've all been there because we're holding all these emotions in. So the first thing we want to do is, am I okay? Right? If it's too deep, then I want to say, did I have an okay day? Right? Was I okay today? Am I feeling okay? And we have to start setting boundaries, right? Because we're so used to in our life to never have boundaries because we're under the impression, I'm here to help the world. I'm here to help people, right? Strangers come to me and they tell me their story for a reason. Yes, that could be your path, but you're also here for you. You need to be your main priority. And we become selfless, right? We become to the point that's like, I'm hungry, but I will wait because I'm going to take this call or I'm going to help my friend or I'm going to help this person, right? Today we found a baby squirrel. I pushed my readings for way later. I started my reading super late because this was a baby squirrel. Like we had to help it, right? And it found the mom, so it was a good ending. But basically, we have to start checking in with ourselves through meditation, through the stillness, looking at the void, right? Looking at ascension, enlightenment, whatever we want to call it, and knowing and accepting that it is a road that has all of the emotions, right? So the whole positive vibes only, I just roll my eyes at that. I feel that a lot of maybe younger people are reading this and looking at this and looking at all these signs that say this, and they may be confused. And we may start feeling like, well, I'm not worth it because I'm not constantly positive. But who is really? I don't think I've gone 24 hours being constantly positive. I think I've gone some hours and then someone cuts me off. And at that moment, I'm just like, and that's perfectly normal. But what we want to start doing is breaking down those emotional walls because we have to start telling ourselves, this is not doing any good for me. Right? So I'm helping other people, but I'm crumbling on the inside. And that is the double-edged sword of being someone who's gifted or someone in the healer path or someone who's an energy sensitive. My grandmother always said, the gift that's a curse is feeling other people's emotions so deeply, right? To the point that you're affected by it, but you're not able to tap into your own. And if you feel like that, this is why I did this chat, because you're not alone. A lot of times we feel like there's something wrong with me. A lot of times we're like, what type of healer am I if I can't, and I hear that a lot. What type of healer am I if I can't this and that? And it's like, there's no types of healers. You can read all this stuff on the internet that places you, oh, you're this type of healer. You're that. There is no quiz. You are your own type of healer. Okay. And your feelings are not negative. Okay. Our feelings are extremely neutral, right? So basically, we want to say exactly how I feel. So let's say I will say right now, how am I doing? Am I okay? Right now, I'll be like, I'm feeling better. I was completely a nervous wreck before we started, and I was sweating out of places that I may have not sweated from before, but now I'm feeling better, right? So focus on the moment instead of saying, okay, how was I feeling this morning? We want to accept this moment. Right now, I'm okay. Or right now, I'm stressed out, right? So let me see here. Okay, so let me see. We don't want to be afraid of also expressing our emotions, right? Or even sending out a risky text to someone, or even an email, and what I usually tell people, because people are like, so let them have it. And I'm like, if you're going to express yourself in an emotional way, you don't want to be a robot, but you don't also want to react out of emotion. So what you want to do is get grounded first, right? So if I know I have to send something emotional to somebody, I'm going to get grounded first, and then I'm going to focus on that, right? Because a lot of times we are afraid because when we actually let ourselves feel, we're just like, I feel too much. Of course, you feel too much because most of the time you're closed off, right? So you want to basically put yourself out there, regardless of whether someone's going to judge you, regardless whether someone's going to like you, someone's going to accept you. And I think this gets easier with age, because my elders would say the same thing in my early 20s, and I would be like, okay, like, I want people to like me, So you have to start saying, if I am comfortable, right, and I have the right to express myself, then I'm going to do it. You are not responsible for their reaction, right? So if I'm being respectable, is that a word? Respectable, or talking with respect, and I'm telling the person, okay, we need to set some boundaries, for example, and the person has a flip out and they're just like, oh my gosh, but it's not my responsibility, because what happens is we try to place boundaries, or we try to express how we feel. And like I said, later on, we're apologizing. We're like, hey, I'm sorry. I said what I said. I didn't mean it. I was upset. I was sad. And it's like, no, you meant it, right? We shouldn't be sorry. And we do this. We tiptoe a lot with people that are never sorry when they say whatever they say. And I don't know what it is about those people that we tiptoe a lot with. There's also people out there that you have to see how your energy reacts with. You can still work with someone you don't like. And I know we see that a lot online. Break the cords. Oh, don't pay attention to them. And, it's like, I wish that was so easy. Like, okay, I'm going to light this candle. I'm going to break the cords and goodbye to you. It's a whole process, you can still work with somebody. You can still live with somebody and learn to have boundaries there. You need to start seeing the people that make you feel like you are not worth it as, look, they're projecting their insecurities on me. And even when the person's saying stuff, you just start saying this in your mind. And when I was told to do this at first, I was like, well, that's not going to work. And then I started doing it and I was like, oh my gosh. And then you actually start seeing it. It's like there's pain there, So step number 1, we're going to meditate. Okay. So I don't want to tell you we're going to do this meditation. What I'm going to be doing is next week, I'm actually going to be recording an elder meditation for you guys. But I'm going to be doing this with bowls instead of me telling you guys, breathe in, breathe out, right? And I'm going to send that in an email to you guys next week. And it's going to be very short. It's going to be 5 to 10 minutes. And what I want you to use that for is every day, take a moment, ask yourself, how am I feeling? How am I doing? Right? If there's an opportunity that shows up, I want you to begin expressing yourself little by little, right? Because everything is baby steps. And I feel like a lot of times we get excited and we're like, I'm going to do this. And then the moment comes and we're like, sweating and we're like, I can't do this. I want you to go little by little. You're going to start being vulnerable with yourself. Vulnerability is not wearing your heart on your sleeve and the world's going to trample on you. Vulnerability literally means I have feelings. My feelings are valid. Right? My feelings are okay. They're neutral. Hey, I got mad. That doesn't mean that I am. Oh, I don't know what I'm hitting. I'm sorry. I hit a button. I didn't mean to do that. But now what we're going to do is I want you, do you guys have anything to share? Let me see. Is everyone unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to put you guys out there. Okay.
Well, I know for myself, I resonated with everything that you're talking about. So that I think that at some point in my life that I felt that it wasn't safe to be vulnerable. And there's been certain instances, even now, that when I've cried or I felt hurt or something like that, that I was made to kind of feel that it wasn't appropriate. So I kind of like put those walls up and I act uh, emotionless. Is that what you call it? And I had somebody tell me at work, that why are you so calm all the time? You never show any emotion. And I was kind of put back with that. And it's true that I get that way sometimes because I don't feel safe. So that's why I have.
That's very valid. Because we tend to feel like it's wrong, like, oh, I'm not supposed to be sad. I'm not supposed to cry. I'm not supposed to show. And I think it's a lot because you become the rock for so many people. You're that person that everybody trusts. And then, like I said, it's not about pride. It's more about, I don't want to be a burden, or to the point that you haven't let yourself feel for so long that if you let yourself feel right now, it's just going to be insane. And all of these feelings are going to come out and that happens to me.
Yeah.
I'm a Gemini moon, Gemini sun, and an Aquarius rising. So I'm all air. And my Lilith is in Scorpio, which all my shadow work has a lot to do with connection, right? And before it was like that, people would be like, you don't feel anything, you're so cool, like, everything is, and on the inside I was a mess, like, especially my 20s was like I call it the dark ages, like, on the outside I was always like, woo, and on the inside I was just like a dramatic movie, like with some violins playing, like this is the end, and I thought that was how it had to be. And the thing was that I was raised by elders. I was raised by curanderos, medicine women, medicine men. They were all in tune. We all did the fire thing, But to me, it was always like when you're raised like that, I was very embarrassed. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, can we just be normal? So I kind of went in a war with that. And to me, it was, I need to be tough. I'm going to be tough. And then I would always be like, why is my mom crying all the time? Why does my grandma always have all these feelings? And I wanted to be tough. And then I realized at some point, it's like, you feel so disconnected because you're afraid to make a connection with your emotions. Because not only that, but when you are in the position of being a healer, you are vulnerable. And then what happens is a lot of times we lead with our heart, and our gut may be saying, oh, this person seems weird. This person has bad vibes, but we're just like, I'm being judgmental. I'm going to help them. And you can't tell me that at least in your life, you've had 3 to 5 people or more that you loved with all of your heart. You helped with all your heart for nothing in return. And somehow they stabbed you in the back. Somehow they betrayed you, right? And that's another thing about vulnerability that people don't talk about. They always take the blame. Well, I don't want to be vulnerable because I don't want to be hurt. But let's see, there's a reason. I haven't wanted to be vulnerable. And it's been a journey I started because of that, because I felt, well, if I got close to this person and then they betrayed me, then I'm broken and I'll have to fix myself, And I always talk about shadow work, but I don't like to shadow work. Shadow work is just like, oh my God. I don't think anybody does.
I think something.
Hi, Casey.
Hi. So something that has helped me in like the journey of, for me, you mentioned something that really stood out. One of them is how as a child you're free. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I've told my friends recently is with a lot of the deep shadow work that I've had to do with healing with my relationships with my parents and really looking into the inner child is that I consider myself free. Mm-hmm. That means that my emotions are not tied to my brain. Mm-hmm. I feel what I feel and it's what I feel, period, point blank. Yeah. And one of the things that has helped me is I call it the 4 whys. So mm-hmm. when an emotion comes up, like, for example, I feel angry or I feel hurt or I'm afraid, I ask myself, why am I afraid of? Well, because mm-hmm. I don't want to seem the vulnerable person. Well, why not? And so you ask yourself why several times until you get to the core issue. It's because mm-hmm. for me, for example, I saw my mom go through suffering. I had a rough childhood. I had certain things happen to me, like the experience that you mentioned, that caused a trauma in me. Mm-hmm. And so as I start to dig deep into those whys, I start to heal that inner child, and it starts to bring me that emotional freedom mm-hmm. where I no longer kind of have that shame of I feel what I feel.
Yeah.
And a lot of times anger, true anger, comes from a sense of feeling hurt, pain,
Mm-hmm.
or afraid. And so when you start to kind of like dig those things up, at least for me, that was really beneficial to get me into this place where I don't feel ashamed for who I am
Mm-hmm.
and what I feel. Like my nephew, he is on the spectrum of autism. And so
Mm-hmm.
we always say he is not autistic. He has autism, but that's not,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't define him.
Mm-mm.
I am a lot of things, but none of them really truly define me. That's not what is pre-written for me. I get to write
Mm-hmm.
my own destiny however I want it to be. So those are some things that kind of have helped me
Mm-hmm.
the last year or so to really get a lot of those old emotions, a lot of that inner child out to really start into this journey of healing. And recently I've realized the beauty that there is in pain,
Oh
because
yeah.
from pain comes healing. And like if
Mm-hmm.
you never experience pain, you can never experience how beautiful it becomes to
Mm-hmm.
heal and to feel that healing. It's like if you never feel sadness, how do you ever know how happiness is? And so that's kind of driving me to feel like this moment shall pass. I feel
Yeah.
like this right now, but tomorrow I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
feel this anymore. It's going to be a different feeling because every day, every moment is a different emotion.
I love
So,
that. And that is so true. You made a point that when we actually shadow work, when we go into that ego script, once we find it, once we say, okay, I don't feel worth it because when I was 8, it loses the power it has over you because now you know where it comes from. So now you can tell your inner child, hey, honey, you are so worth it. You know, it's their loss. You were fast. You had nothing to do with why they didn't pick you. And another thing that you mentioned is, you know, when we cry, when we have those cries, and it's the ugly cries, I call them the ugly cries, when we usually hide in the shower. And because the kids, that's another thing I have to work with because I'm not a physical crier, right? And I remember my grandmother died, like I kept my stuff together. I was kind of like in shock and obviously calming my mom down, right? And then I took a shower and I was ugly crying, like ugly crying. And when you ugly cry like that with all, like you just fall to the floor. But at the end, you take that breath, when you're like, like that.
you feel
And
relieved.
yes,
Like, oh, it feels
yes,
so good.
like that breath is like a hug. It's like, see, I'm getting the chills. That one breath kind of says, it's okay, and when you cry like that, to me, it's like pain is beautiful because that's when you finally break open and you say, you know what? It's okay that I'm feeling like this, right? Part of my path is to break, right? Because when I break, I built myself up. And those wisdom are the scars. All those scars, we're not perfect. And we have all these scars, but each scar has a story. So when you're like an elder, a young person will come or your friend will come and will say, oh my God, I'm going through this. And we're able to give them that, just even that hug without a word, that they will understand. Oh my God, she gets it. Oh my God, because it's pain. Pain is what gives us wisdom. It's not it's not positive vibes only. It's not, oh, I'm always happy. It's like, did you fall? Did you bleed? Did you scream? And nobody heard you, but did you get back up? Yeah. Okay. Let's be friends.
Yeah,
Tell
it's
me
like
how you
you're
did
holding
it.
all that in. You'll bust in any minute. Just watch. It's like you'll have
For
your
real.
breakdown.
And those
There's
are the
just
best conversations when people
yeah.
are raw. Those are my favorite conversations. Like when I do readings for people, like with you guys, and then you guys get back to me and you guys, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you how this spoke to me. And to me, it's like, now we're family. And I think that's why I have that connection with clients. And that's why I hate calling people clients, because it's like, well, my clients are my family, but they're also my teachers. So it's like, I don't like that word. But when you get raw and you say, oh, you know what? I am just tired. I am sick and tired. And the other person's just listening to you and they're like, all right, be sick and tired. And they're not saying, I don't be sick and tired. Everything's going to be okay. Put your happy face on. You need that person to say, girl, you're sick and tired. Make it work for you. Make that fire burn. There's those kind of friends. We have those friends that we need sometimes that give us a hug and they'll say, oh, everything's going to be okay. Those are who I call the mother archetypes. But then we have those friends that are like mother archetypes with fire that will say, you're feeling down. You've had enough you've had enough shit and you're like, yeah. And they're like, all right, what are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? We're not going to stay there, right? We're going to do something. And I think it's beautiful. Those, when we allow that vulnerability to come true, that cry, that scream, that roar, when you just say, oh my gosh, you know, I think that's the most beautiful part of being a human, is being raw,
Yes.
right?
I agree.
Yes.
Does
And
anybody?
you can recognize it in people. Like, I know for
Mhm.
me, I can recognize it in someone, like, even at work, like, I gravitate more towards someone that's real and it's who they are. And I've been told that before through different positions that I've held. And you can tell that there's an appreciation for someone that is who they are in any setting.
Yeah.
Because you get the real part of it, and you can
You
feel
read
that.
the energy.
Totally.
And it's like you could tell when you're talking to people and they're like kind of walking on eggshells. Every time I talk to someone like that, it's like I want to give them a hug, which I'm not a hugger, but there's those people I want to give a hug and I want to say, oh, girl, just tell me how you really feel, you know? And it's usually the people that are pressured. And I think we all go through that in our life. We are pressured to, okay, I have to have this shit together. I have to look this way. I have to be presentable. And then you see, and it's like so much beauty in them. And they may be saying, hey, how are you? And they're like, I'm fine. And a lot of you here have called me out. A lot of you have been like, how are you really? And I'm like, I'm fine. And you guys are like, I know it's a text, but girl, how are you really? You know, and it's like something that you sense. And I feel that true connection comes from vulnerability. And we love it in other people. So we also have to say, you know, if I love people being vulnerable with me, there is somebody out there that's going to say, oh my gosh, this was like the best conversation I've ever had with you. And you're going to be like, but I was a mess. And they're going to be like, this was the realest conversation we've ever had. You have to remind yourself that you are worth it, you know? And if somebody can't handle your feelings, if somebody can't handle your bad day, then that's on them. Maybe that's a red flag. If somebody constantly wants you to be happy, like Josh, for example, we've going for 18 years. He said, we're going for 18 years in a week. I think it's our anniversary. I don't even know, which is a knockoff, a ripoff, because I thought it was 20, but now it's 18. And I'm like, dude, I've been telling people. And he's like, well, you need to do your math. If he would not be able to handle me, I'm moody. I am so moody. I'm a Gemini, so I'm all over the place. One moment I'm love and light. The other moment I'm like, oh my God, I just want to get on a spaceship. I want to be done. If he would ever told me or made me feel like my emotions are valid, I don't think we would have. I was very picky. I don't think we would have been. I would have been like, dude, you you got to let me express myself. And I feel a lot of times we're surrounded by people that we love, that we truly love, but they're not used to it. And then we feel like, oh, I'm sorry. I've said that so many times in my 20s. I used to say, I'm sorry, I think I said too much, or I would come up with excuses because I've never drank. So I couldn't tell people, oh, I think I drank too much. So I had to be like, I didn't get enough sleep. So I think I shared too much. And then I would just like not talk to the person because I was ashamed because I opened up, you know? So I think it's beautiful when we actually realize, well, if I love vulnerable people, vulnerability is courage, because this is me in the raw, right? I'm not telling you, hi guys, it's me, Natalia. I'm always happy. You know, you guys have seen me come live. And I think of one time, when I went to Puerto Rico and I did that live from Puerto Rico, I cried. I ugly cried, live in the tribe, because it was the night that I met all the elders and my grandmother wasn't there. And that was a mess. That was the first time ever. And I think I went on there shaking and I had a moment. And then I was like, oh my God, you guys. And everyone's like, oh, let it out. And then that made me cry even more. But I think there's beauty in that because someone's watching you. And I constantly think of Daphne. Daphne is a Leo. Daphne is a show woman. She's just like a show girl. She's my little girl. And I make sure that I'm raw with her, right? Because she's going into preteen. She's a preteen, actually. I have to admit it. She's a preteen. Girls are eventually going to start getting mean. They're going to end that bubble. And I make her feel like tell me everything. I tell her, and she does. I'll be like, you don't always have to tell me your day was great. I was like, if your day was, we call it poo poo caca. I was like, if your day was poop, you're going to tell me, Mom, my day was poop. And literally the other day, she got in the car and she was like, Mom, my day was a big poop. And we talked about it, and she expressed herself, and I gave her a big hug, and she kind of cried a little bit, but I just told her, this is what we need to do when your day is poop. We got to sit together. We got ice cream. We ruined dinner, but it was the best moment because she felt safe, and as women, we're constantly always told, we got to be strong. You got to be this, you got to be that. As men, they're always told, men don't cry, boys don't cry. So it's really hard for both, as a guy, it's like, hey, you can't cry, keep it together. And then when men grow up, people always wonder, why are men not in touch with their feelings, and it's like, dude, they're not like broken. It's not like men don't come with feelings and you have to turn a button on. It's like, we also have to see how the patriarchy, we always talk about the patriarchy, it also affects men, right? We always see it from one side, from the women's side, but men are the same. This is something I talk about to Josh all the time. He is total sensitive, but he is, there's an ounce of emotion. So he'll just be like, and it's like, dude, it's okay. It's okay to have emotion. And that's crazy because men go through it too.
My whole life.
I'm sorry. That really resonates with me because I've always been told that I'm an onion by my friends. And I'm telling you, especially from my family, they made me that way. And I grew up in a family where addiction was a big issue. And so when you have addictions, you don't name your feelings. You don't deal with your feelings. You're numbing them. And so I was too much.
Oh, yeah.
I was too sad. I was too angry. I was too happy. And so I would like tone myself down to make other people comfortable.
You dim your light so they're comfortable.
Yeah.
And then you start feeling like, okay, I'm the problem. I feel too much. They're right. And yeah, that leads to a lot of addiction. Like when Josh was struggling with he's been sober for 5 years. He literally to this day is learning to feel again, and I just have to remind myself, because sometimes I'll say, dude, what do you truly feel? And he'll just be like, I'm not sure, and then I forget. It's like, let's work with it, and that is a lot of why addictions will happen, because you're always a person that's too much. You're the black sheep. You feel too much. You talk too crazy. You're too happy. When you're happy, you're all over the place. Tone it down. And we start feeling like, okay, everything that I feel is wrong, so I'm going to put it away. And I think that with addiction, what people do is they numb everything because they're no longer allowed to feel. And that's really lonely,
I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery for 30 years, and I think I go through times like that. I get to where, because when you get sober, that's it. When you're using drugs or drinking or food or whatever you're doing, it numbs the pain. And then once you're sober, it's like everything is just like wide open for you. You feel everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Yeah.
So right when I felt like I was okay to do so and I felt safe, I would venture out. I would open myself up to others. And then I would come across somebody that was not good with me being so open with my vulnerability. And it was almost like a shock. It's kind of like something hit my what do you call it? That shield. Somebody hit my shield.
Yeah.
So I have to, the shield just gets up and it's hard again, so that's what happens with myself.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think I'm finding out now that I'm not the same person to everybody that I
Mm-mm.
know. Because I know there are certain people that I can be raw with,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll be raw with me, and it's accepted. And there are people that I'm not, that are not
Yeah.
okay with it, that I have to work with, that I have to live with, or
Mhm.
have, you know what, that are even in my family. So thank God for little groups like this, the
Yeah.
tribe. Thank God for, that's why I go to AA meetings, because
Mhm.
that's my safe circle, that if I need to cry, I'm gonna cry right
Yeah.
there, and everybody's,
It's your
you know,
safe
so,
zone. Everybody needs the
right.
safe zone. And I realize that a lot of people will easily say, okay, let's take off our mask, like our energy mask, not the other ones, our energy mask. And I feel like people kind of forget of everybody wears a mask. We always have a mask for different groups, right? So if it's somebody that we don't know, we're not just completely like, hey, this is me, right? And I feel like that also makes people feel like we're wrong. Like, oh my God, well, they say they don't wear a mask. And I feel like everybody just gets a little bit of us, right? So this person gets this person gets me crazy. Like this person will get me dancing in the supermarket and being ridiculous. Well, this person gets me to not even say a word because I don't know them. Right. And then this person gets me, you know what I mean? But I think it's a beautiful thing. We only have 3 minutes left. And now I feel like we should have done this for way longer. So I'm going to see what I'm going to do. Because we're like, for everyone that signed up, maybe we can do another hour thing. I always do the same thing. I'll make classes and then I'll extend them. And everyone's like, do we have to pay? I'm like, no, we're just not done. I feel like we should do another one. That's fine with you guys. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the schedule and then I'm going to get Brad to email the next link, and maybe do it another Friday night or maybe a Sunday night, because of Jaime's football season. Oh my gosh. So if you guys are cool with that, I'm going to check the schedule and I'm going to have Brad email you guys next week if you guys want to continue this, right? And I'll record it because there's a bunch of people that are not here. And I think a lot of people were scared. They're like, I don't know if I want to be on camera. And I'm like, you got to be on camera with me. I'm used to recording. I'm not used to, I love this, you guys. So there's messages down there. Gracie was my teacher in this Zoom. Okay. Because with her, I'm recording. I know what I'm doing. If it wasn't for Gracie, I'd had no idea. Okay. So we're going to end this and I'm going to send out emails. Look, it's Vincent. That's who that is. I was like, I know that guy. Hi, Vincent.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Okay, Mary's here. Mary, next time we want to hear from you because you are one of our tribe elders and a mama. I call you the mama. Me and Josh love Mary, and I still have to meet her in person. I have to get out of my shell. I have to get out of my house. But this whole week, I've been tested, but I've done things out of my comfort zone. I went to the DMV like a big girl. I did an interview on Instagram. I've just been sweating all week, like, woo. But I'm going to set this up. This is going to end soon. And we're going to do this again in like a week or so. Are you guys good with that?
Yes.
Well,
Sounds
thank
good.
you for being here,
Yeah.
you guys. I love you guys. And I'll see you in like a week from now. Okay.
Love you.
Love
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.